Hello and welcome to Good Show, the podcast helping you answer one of the most daunting questions in television. What am I watching next? I'm Brandon Sharp.
And I'm Anthony Mako.
And on this episode of Good Show, we are discussing The Peripheral. This sci-fi thriller is set in the near future and follows Flynn Fisher, a VR gaming phenom who has her mind and body stretched to their very limits in the most realistic, seemingly virtual world she has ever experienced. Now, that synopsis is terrible. It may not sound terrible, but it's a terrible representation of what the show actually is. The only problem is, the more I say, the more I spoil. Anyways, it's sci-fi, it's futuristic, it's mind-bending, even to the point of maybe being mind-numbing. But we'll get into that later. The Peripheral was created by Scott Smith and aired on Amazon Prime for the first time on October 21st of the past year. And with that, Anthony, let's talk about The Peripheral.
Let's talk. We're back. Do you want to say anything about being back or no?
Yeah, you're great at that stuff.
Well, we're back, and it feels good to be back.
It does feel really good to be back.
It's been a little while.
I think it's been a little longer than we thought it would be.
Yeah, maybe like a month
least.
and a half since we recorded one, something like that. So, well, maybe just about a month probably, but yeah, it's been. Did you have a good Christmas?
I had a great Christmas.
I had a great Christmas also.
Good. Yeah, it was one of the more relaxed Christmases that I've had in a while, had in at least a handful of years. So
yeah, nice.
I think it was a combination of like certain people being out of town takes some pressure off. But anyway, yeah, it was a good Christmas.
Yeah.
Good Christmas.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, but it's really good to be back. I think we got a couple new initiatives we're going to tell you about. I don't know if ever during this episode, but we're going to try some new stuff this year, but we're ready to get back rolling. And I guess that's all. Just saying we're back.
Yeah, well, one of them you might have seen already. TikTok, we did a little segment called Quick... what's it called? What's the segment called? Quick Hits. It's called Quick Hits. And anyway, so basically it's... If you've listened to our episodes before, which most of you have probably, if you're listening now, at the end of the episode, we just talk about what we've been watching, and that is what Quick Hits is all about.
But the TikTok version is going to be even quicker. It's just like a real quick, maybe 1 minute, hey, check this out.
It's going to be very TikTok-y, so I've been told.
Yeah, Brandon's also going to do some dancing like everybody else on TikTok.
Not that TikTok-y.
He's very trendy. He's going to hit those trends, those dance trends.
I did cook some ramen for the first time today, so that's TikTok-y.
Is it? I didn't know that. Well, see, TikTok is just whatever.
It's a little of everything, yeah.
I did have to warn Brandon early on. Basically, everybody has naked people at first when you get on TikTok. So it like tries to chase you away.
TikTok's filthy.
It's not filthy once you get your algorithm set.
If you're listening to like music, I like some of the politics stuff, follow some of the stuff going on. There is some good stuff on there. It's just, you got to kind of get out of the weeds.
Just a little bit of everything, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's get rolling on The Peripheral.
Let's do it.
So, Anthony, what grabbed you first? Was it just straight recommendation from me?
No.
Because I didn't force you into this one. It feels like I did.
Oh, you did force me. You forced me into watching it, but it's not what hurt. Oh, what grabbed me first. I'm sorry. Where did I hear?
However you want to interpret that question.
What I was about to answer was where I heard about it. And it was one of those like well advertised.
Yes, it was.
I don't know why I feel like bringing this up right now, but some of the designs of the streaming sites really bother me. And I do not like Prime's design. I think it's too easy to get lost in the options, and they show you, depending on where you are, like what if you're watching it on TV or a iOS app or on your computer.
Yeah, I got you.
I actually do watch a fair amount on my browser, and when you open that up in a browser, you have every option in the world in front of you. And they don't actually make it incredibly easy, as far as I've seen, to resume what you have been watching. Like on Netflix, most of the time there's like a continue watching and you have everything that you're watching at the time. I don't feel like Amazon does that well. And I also don't think Apple TV, by the way, does that very well either. But both of those particular streaming sites, I think, make it really easy to lose things. But I bring that up because like they advertised the heck out of this leading into it. And you've been like talking me into watching some more Prime things. And so as you have, I was on there a lot more. And so I saw a ton of it. And I literally remember mentioning to you, I didn't think I would be interested in this show at all because of what it looked like based on the advertisement. Now, as you said, it's not exactly what it looked like. And you even said to me when you sold me on watching the show, you even said, it's not that. It's not what you think. Exactly. And you were right about that.
Okay, I was right about that.
Yeah. It's funny you say it's a little bit of what you think, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say all that because I just read an article today about how Netflix is super hush-hush about their data. And they basically, you could completely miss things that you would be interested in on Netflix because of the way their algorithm works. You basically only see the things that they think you want to see.
Oh yeah.
So you could completely miss things. Whereas now they didn't mention Prime, but they mentioned, I think HBO, Hulu, Paramount, some of those.
Yeah.
If they have a new show coming out, they advertise it really well.
Yes.
Whereas Netflix spends almost $0 on advertising.
Sure.
They just rely on the algorithm making sure everyone sees what they want them to see or what they want to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. I didn't even think about that. But Apple TV they spend money on advertising for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And Prime definitely does. Prime definitely does. It's just interesting to me that I hadn't even noticed that Netflix just doesn't.
Well, and another interesting thing about that, I'm sorry to break away from the episode, but another interesting thing about that is basically like Prime has now taken over Thursday Night Football. So people are hopping on there and then that advertising pops in. Apple TV has some sports content now. So like and on Apple TV, I guess on all these, the only thing you're ever going to see an advertisement for is that streaming services stuff. But if you're watching Friday Night Baseball on Apple TV, you get a ton of advertisements for Apple TV shows. And same thing with Prime. If you're watching Thursday Night Football, you'll get a lot of advertisements for those. So that makes sense. But Netflix isn't necessarily pulling anyone in from the outside like that. So that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of show do you feel like this is?
So I'm going to reserve a lot of these comments for later in the episode.
Okay, so let's say what we know, though.
Yeah, well, what I want to say about it is I do want to say I don't think this show knows exactly what it is.
Right. But let's say that there are some things we could definitely say.
Okay.
Like it's definitely sci-fi.
It's definitely sci-fi. Yes, definitely sci-fi.
Talking
also very action-y. It's so like not every sci-fi is uber action. This one is heavy action. It's
action thriller.
Yep. Military adjacent, lots of different stuff like that. So it's suspenseful in a very sort of violent way. Like there's a lot of violence going on.
As far as quality wise, I feel like at first glance, now you've mentioned some things that I'd like you to bring up.
I will.
At first glance, I feel like it feels premium drama.
Yes, I think so too. But I mean, with all the effects, perhaps even cinematic, the intention of it is very, very expensive and a lot of effects, a lot of stuff like that. The things that he was talking about that I was going to bring up were, I noticed, I actually don't notice these things. I'm not usually looking for continuity things or quality things like this. I don't usually notice these types of things, but for some reason in this show, I noticed several sort of almost like corners that were cut on production. So for example, one of them, there's oftentimes in this group of two people having a conversation where there's basically, it's a usual TV tactic, but there's three cameras on the shot. There's one shooting both of them, and then there's one shooting each of them. And I believe what it's called when so if you and I are talking and I'm the one talking, they'll get a coverage shot of you, like behind you, or they'll get a coverage shot of you looking at me, and you're not actually doing anything. You're just looking at me. And then they'll get coverage on all these different shots sometimes. Well, I noticed multiple times, not just one time, multiple times, there was voiceover over some lines of one of the characters talking, and it was kind of the angled shot of the other person, but you could see that their mouth wasn't moving at all. But their voice was still going. It
that's a
really
goof.
bothered me.
That's a big goof.
Yeah, it's a
sure.
big goof. And then there was a fight at one point where one of the people's wearing a scarf, and during the fight, she gets tackled to the ground, and the scarf goes completely out of her jacket over her face. And then they cut to the next thing, and the scarf's already fixed. But it's like, if something like that happened during filming, you would have to stop and say, I'm sorry, we have to take that again. Like, it was so egregious. We have to take it again. So I was very confused about what was going on with that. It's like so much money invested into the production of the show. And then these nearly inexcusable mistakes. I thought it was really, really interesting to me. I mean, I could see it just basically being like, I'm sorry, we're not going to, spend the money to fix that. But
can I say that's awfully technical of you?
I know.
In a good way. Like I think that the transformation is complete. You're a full-on TV critic now.
I suppose it is, but I don't think I was.
Usually, that's some great stuff. That's good catches. I didn't catch that stuff.
Well,
I like it.
I mean, the funny thing is I was working while I was watching it too, and I still caught those things. So
interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one.
What do you think? You have any thoughts on this?
I think it has a very sleek look, and I will say I missed the things that you're referencing. I would have bumped on them. There wasn't much I bumped on. I felt like, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but there was some dialogue I bumped on. There was a clunkiness to some of it. It didn't go down smooth. The way I feel like something like this should. Like, the closest thing that I would relate this to is The Matrix. It feels very Matrices in some parts. Yeah. But The Matrix, at least the first one, goes down so like it's so smooth. It's easy to, like, you get in there, you grasp it. This just a little clunky. While we're getting ahead of ourselves, how'd you feel about the characters in the show?
Yeah, generally speaking, that was one of my favorite parts. And so, for any poo-pooing I do on the show,
memorable characters.
Yes, very good. So I think I've mentioned on the show before that I love the movie Sing Street, and Jack Rayner is my favorite character in Sing Street. And he's also in this show, and he does a wonderful job as sort of the brother of the main character in the show. But also him and he's got a group of military buddies, basically. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler.
No, not at all.
And I'm not going to say that like every single one of them was, well, we're not talking about acting as much as we're talking about characters. And I do like those relationships a lot. I think the brotherhood was totally viable, and the way that they kind of took care of each other as a military group of people would, I thought that was very good. I don't want to overlook, I suppose, the Chloe Grace Moritz of it all. She did really well. I mean, she did a great job. And I sort of really liked Corbell Pickett. He's a good villain. Yeah.
Lewis Hertham plays Corbell Pickett. He's really good.
Yes.
Chloe Grace, she felt very Florence Pugh in this for some reason, and Florence Pugh's way better.
Yeah.
She's just quite a bit better actor.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or anything. She just, their roles felt similar. Felt like something Florence Pugh has done recently, and I'm a huge fan of Florence Pugh. Anyway, Jack Rayner plays Burton Fisher, the brother, like you said. The brotherhood thing might have been my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
Which you could say is a problem because the story doesn't center around that.
Yep.
Maybe it should have. But anyway, Gary Carr, who plays Wilf Netherton, probably, did he bug you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's in a show. He was in Downton Abbey, and I thought he's a very British, like, BBC actor, so I thought he's good. Also, Katie Lang from Harry Potter. I mean, this is all the BBC. They love reusing.
I guess let me say a little bit more about, you said, did Gary Carr bother me or bug me? And I said yes. Just quickly, I feel like he was trying to fill a stereotype in this show of sexy whatever dude.
Well, his voice is so like, I just feel like he can't help it. Like,
I'm not saying he isn't sexy. I'm just saying
he's got this like deep ebony skin,
sure,
and he's got this sultry voice. I mean, he's a good looking guy.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I'm just saying his character shouldn't have necessarily had no reason to be that way. So it was more like he was in it to be a item of desire for watchers, and not so much. Yeah. and he didn't do poorly. It's just that's the only thing that bugged me about him.
The only person that bugged me was Charisse Newland. She's the head of RI.
Yep.
Who was like a group, an organization in the show, kind of a villain type character.
Yeah.
I didn't think she was particularly sinister or anything. It was just kind of forgettable for me. So
that's interesting. I think I sort of agree with you, but I guess we have to distinguish between characters and acting.
We're all over the place now with that.
I think her acting was fine. She seemed sinister enough as an actress.
You think her character was poorly written, maybe?
Yeah. And poorly described why she's a villain, sort of. Justification of a villain. But you did remind me of the police officer. She was great. And another person who sort of bugged me was Connor Penske.
His accent is messy.
Well, don't start me on the accents, all right? Because
you think there was more than one messy one?
I think there were more than one messy one. And also, the show takes place in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Like, it's very Appalachian. That's fine, but there's no reason for that to be the case. So
there's no reason for the show to take place there?
Right. There's not a specific reason for the show to take place there. And so I'm like, sometimes wonder whether people will place things in a
vague area,
in a vague, but,
hillbilly.
Well, yeah, I was trying to avoid saying hillbilly.
Is that a bad word?
No, I don't think it's a bad word. I just was trying to find some Appalachian context so that the accent is very cheesy and easy to. I don't even know that people actually talk like that.
It's like the difference between putting something in Atlanta and Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Like, both Southern.
Yes.
One's much more distinguished. Like, the accent is much more distinguished in one than the other.
Yes. So
I can get on board with that.
Okay. So let's put it in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Then we can dial the accents up to 10. Nobody really has to act that hard. We just throw on not act. I'm not saying they're not acting well, but I am saying, like, we don't even have to explore the nuance of the accents. We just put it on number 10. put that hillbilly accent up to 10, and now we're good. We don't even have to think much about it. Whereas, like, if you think like a show set in Britain, you got to like zero in on the street they were raised on so that you get the right like tone to it.
That's so true.
Yeah. So it's just no nuance to it, I think, is the problem. Yeah. But anyway.
The story is interesting, is a word I would use.
It is. Yes.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
One might say too much.
Yeah, you could say that. I think if we follow the Matrix comparison along here, I think the Matrix picked a couple of things. I'll say this. I won't beat around the bush. I had to go back over the first few episodes of this show with a microscope to make sure I understood exactly what was going on. I don't feel like that should be something you need to do.
No way.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, I think the Matrix is a good comparison. I think there is some Matrix stuff in here. I think there's a little pieces of a bunch of different stuff in this show, like influences from different areas of sci-fi, and the Matrix is certainly one of them. But what the Matrix did really well was the pills. Red pill, blue pill. There's people in whatever those things were plugged in, and you're acting in a fake world. Okay. I just described the mind-blowing element of the Matrix, which you cannot succinctly describe the mind-blowing element of the Peripheral.
I think I can now, but I think it took a lot of work for me to get there.
I don't think I'd be curious to hear your quick explanation.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it right now.
No, I know you wouldn't
spoil everything. But
I think I'd have to be like, yeah, but what about this? What about this? Like, I think the whole time I'd just be adding pieces on because I think tried to do too many mind-blowing elements.
I agree with that.
And then
I agree with that.
Also, I think there were some head fakes in there to like try and throw you off the trail, and they didn't really matter. Those pieces of information didn't really matter. It was just there to try and mess you up so you didn't get it quickly.
So based on what I said, that I had to go back, watch the first few over again, stop, rewind, make sure I heard everything correctly. Did you feel any of that in the later episodes? Like, daggone it, what was that thing I should have remembered? Is any of that like bouncing around in your head at all? Or were you pretty good on, I know what they're talking about now. It just felt like as the episodes kept going on, there's something I forgot or there's something I'm missing.
Yeah, you're right, for sure. But I think for whatever reason, you really needed to go back and find it out. And I was just like, well, whatever, I don't get it. I don't know what the difference is, but I also like afterward, I was like, so is this what happened? And you were like, I don't know.
Well, I hadn't gone back over yet.
Oh, okay.
When you said, when we were having that conversation,
okay.
I was like, well, now I definitely have to, because
yeah. So
I want to know.
Hang
Two,
on. So you got that question answered, or some of those questions?
I don't
answered?
remember the question you
sure.
specifically asked, but yeah, I feel like all of my questions are answered now. So,
okay.
Yes, I'm going to say yes to that.
All right. So pay attention early on.
Pay attention early on. Yeah, absolutely. First 2 episodes are crucial. Really kind of lay the foundation for this show. The writing is not great.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not great.
The story's okay. I feel like it's a little confusing. It's a little overcomplicated. I think the dialogue, there was a couple times I was like, woof. You know how we've talked about that military bro talk?
I was just about to bring it up.
We get a dose, at least the adult dose of that once.
Yes.
Maybe twice.
I'm thinking of exactly the time that because I was going to bring it up too. I always compare it to, there's an outtake in Rush Hour, I think 2 or 3. It's an outtake. It's not actually in the movie, but there's an outtake where
when the guy falls out of the building.
Yeah. And he's like, he's not going to be in Rush Hour 3. And it's like that sort of line.
Yeah.
Only it happens in the show where it's like, take that, buddy. Or something.
Did you ever watch CSI Miami?
Yes. Yeah.
Right before the opening credits would roll.
Uh-huh.
What's the guy's name? Antonio or Marcus or
take his glasses off.
And he would sit and say something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time there. It could have been better. It wasn't terrible. Hopefully we've given people a reason to watch the show though.
Yeah, hold on. So let me say, like, as critical as I was of oh my gosh, what's the Chris Pratt show?
Terminal List.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's, in my opinion, not as cheesy as I don't think the Terminal List was cheesy, but I think it's better than the Terminal List in the action realm. A little more authentic than I literally was thinking that, because I wouldn't say the soldiers in this are perfect, but they're better than the Terminal List, I think.
I will say some of the scenes with the soldiers are awesome.
Yeah. So it's the action is
some
good.
really cool stuff. A little bit of a twist. They're adding elements, some
of the stuff,
futuristic stuff.
Yes,
I mean, it's cool. It's really cool.
And that stuff,
it would make a great video game.
Yes, all that stuff made really good sense to me. If they would have really leaned into that, I might have been even more interested than I was.
Could this show have benefited from a little humor, maybe?
Well, I mean, I think every show could benefit from a little humor, but it's such a fine line when it comes to like humor.
I wasn't like waiting for a joke, but I was like, this show's missing something.
Well, okay, so you have a brother-sister element, and they don't joke around with each other very much. Like that's a good point. Like, and you have a brotherhood of, I mean, the 2 guys in the military,
there is a little banter there. Now that you mention that,
elbow,
you're right.
Whatever that is,
you're right.
Elbowing.
I felt like it could have used a little more.
Sure.
Just something, like an extra layer. When the show is doing the thing that it does, like the main story, I felt like it was just ultra serious. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it was maybe some serious content.
Yeah. Any humor that I just mentioned was not funny. So
it was Appalachian. So like we've said, this show seems to be a jack of all trades, at least as far as sci-fi goes. Mm-hmm. Make what you will of that. Is it a master of none? Does it not really do any of them that well? And if that's true, does that ruin the show for you?
It didn't ruin the show. So let me pause and just say, like, I enjoyed this just fine. I enjoyed this show just fine. It's just not going to appear on a top list of shows this year or anything, or, from last year for me. But I enjoyed it just fine. And yeah, I think that's probably an okay way to describe it. It is a jack of many sci-fi trades and not a master of any of them. If they would have, I'm not even saying like in the ones that, in some of them, they had enough information that if they would have run that direction, it would have been very interesting. But because they add these other things to it, it's just like, well, now that doesn't make any sense why these things fit together, because just pick one of those elements and run with it.
So there is a strong, at least in the beginning, gaming element to the show. It's like an evolved gaming.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely is. But that's not necessarily where it ends up.
No, and that's my point. That's what I was, if you would let me finish, I was going to say.
Well, you're the one that stopped. I didn't even stop you. You stopped.
I would have liked more of that. I felt like that would have been a good lane to maybe be in. I mentioned in the intro, it got a lot of VR elements to it. Gaming has kind of evolved in that way in this show. And we bail out of that pretty quick. Without getting too specific.
Yeah, no, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. And obviously the reason we're being so weird is because we don't want to ruin it for you.
No.
It's worth digging into.
Yes. So I will say, I stand behind this show. I rewatched at least half of it, and I was like, I really enjoy this. I think it's overcomplicated. I think it's a little confusing. I think as soon as you figure out what exactly is going on, I think it's a really good show. I enjoyed it. I really did. Now, and I'm probably going to be, people are going to hear this and be like, you couldn't figure this show out, Well, it's not that, I'm going to own that because I could not figure it out on my first pass. There was at least a key piece of information, probably two, that I don't think I figured it out either. So I'm with you. Oh, okay. Well,
there's some stuff missing. Yeah, you're wrong.
Yeah. And I was like, my problem is it gives the show little to no stakes if you don't know exactly what's going on.
Yes.
It just feels like there are no stakes at some points. Like some of the big stuff, like this is supposed to be like what the show is hinging on. It's just like, oh, and you kind of move on and you're okay with it. And it's because I think you missed something.
Or there are too many big stakes, something like that.
Sure.
What is the problem we're solving here? And I think there's like 20 of them. So it makes it makes it really hard to buy in fully, to be passionate about the solve for the problem. The way I think, just stop me if I get too spoilery, but I think without getting specific, I think there's so many elements of different sci-fi shows within the show. The creators of this created Westworld. There's certainly some Westworld in this show. It's Westworld adjacent. There is some Matrix in this show, like you said. There is some Ready Player One in this show. And that's, obviously related to sort of the video game element. And so one of the things I think Westworld, Matrix, Ready Player One, those all had a clearer sort of mission with this is the problem we're solving. And this one tried to have 5 or 6 problems that we're solving. And I don't know what the purpose of that was. I don't know if it was to try and throw you off the trail or what.
Like we said, a lot of interesting things happening here. Do you ever feel like sci-fi shows or movies create new ultra convenient rules to fix or explain a problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair of them to do so because they created the problem, sort of. They pointed out the problem at least. So
yeah.
But since they came up with the problem, it's fair to fix it. But what I think has to accompany that is explanation of sort of the rules, what the heck's going on here, and why did that fix work? Just so we're starting to, because what I want to understand in sci-fi is I want to know the whole universe. I have a really hard time suspending my disbelief on. I still need the logic to line up. And I think in this show there was some of that didn't line up, which is some of what bothered me. But once you give me the rules, all right, that's fine. Let's play with that. And there's some convenient fixes where it's there's just if we just do this, it solves it. Well, why? How? I didn't know you were able to do that. Seems like you could have told me an episode ago that you could do that. And then conveniently you bring it up and use it in a real life situation. It's just
I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I am very ultra. That doesn't follow the rules. Say a Back to the Future effect. I feel like Avengers Endgame made me do that.
Yeah.
You're not. This is not adding up.
Yeah.
And of course, Avengers Endgame famously had that big exposition dump to explain all that stuff, which I don't like that either. I don't want that. But at the same time, I do feel like I can get to a point where I say to myself, they don't care about the rules. So either I move forward not caring about the rules and enjoy myself, or get hung up on the rules.
Do you think they don't care about the rules?
I felt like they were very loosey-goosey with the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. And that's just what bothered me, I guess. But so let's talk about one specific example And I think it's emblematic of other things. You know, this is going to spoil a very small thing that I don't think is going to matter in the long run. But two of the characters have this thing where it comes out of nowhere and the dude says, oh, if you just pinch your fingers together like this, then we can do this. You know, so I can explain this vaguely. But and also then this thing happens. It's like they sort of merge as two people. There's never any explanation of how this is even possible. They're merging as two people. And it's really only used for one. It's not like a big power that everyone now has and can somehow solve this problem. It's just like a thing they just threw in, just made up. And it's just a pinching of their fingers that does it. So when you're going to like bend space and time for different reasons, you know, all this different stuff, like make it worth it to create this thing. Like I just didn't get that. And there's a couple of those type things in the show where it's just like, well, you could have not done that and we didn't have to mess with all that. So what, you just get over that? I mean, I had to get over it too, but
I think I'm able to just accept more.
Okay.
Just be okay with it. I wouldn't say I get over it. You know what? It's just an adaptability that I have that well, there's really no other way for me to say it and not sound like a arrogant jerk, but I do feel like I'm able to kind of figure out what kind of show I'm watching pretty quick and be like, okay, I need to care or not care about certain things. I think fantasy, I mean, the fantasy and sci-fi are the ones. I think I notice this more in fantasy.
But most of the best fantasies do all the work to make sure it's exhaustively explained, the universe. In my fantasy / sci-fi, I like to understand my world. Each little thing that happens has to teach me something about the world. If it's a different world, I enjoy thinking about a different world than what I exist in. I enjoy that process. But if I'm not learning about the world, that's what I do in the real world. And so I like to do that in the fantasy world too. Like I'm always testing the world to see what's going on. And I am building my life based on that. And so I like to build my TV watching around that as well, where it's like, well, I need a little piece of like, how's this helpful? And like, what do I do with this information? And maybe you observe easier.
I think it's because I don't know. I think it's because I love sci-fi. I love exploring new ideas in sci-fi. And I think if you're not Star Wars and Star Trek, and I'm sure there's a couple other ones that, you know, people would correct me with, if you're not one of the big ones, you got to try something, you know?
Yeah.
You got to try something to make your mark.
Sure.
And I think I'm more open to creators trying things.
So am I. Yeah.
And I will agree that they tried too much here. And that would be my biggest criticism. I think if you got the time and you want to get in there with your microscope, I think you would really enjoy yourself. I still think you'll enjoy yourself.
I do too. But
I needed to go back and rewatch at least the first 2 episodes to be like, okay, there's a couple terms they use that I was a little vague on and they explain them. It didn't click that, okay, this is something you need to pay attention. He's talking right now. You need to listen to this. You know, not everything is important the whole time you're watching a show, you know, as you know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you can discard some pieces of information. There's a couple things you have to pay attention to or it won't make sense. Does this show have a real villain? Or, I mean, we've mentioned a couple. We mentioned 2, actually. We said villain adjacent, villainy.
Yeah, I think potentially it has multiple. And there's sort of maybe I'll describe it like a near villain and a far villain. I almost want to say like real and imagined. That's not exactly correct, but it's like there's a neighborhood villain and a world villain.
I mean, that's exactly right. I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense.
Sure.
But there's a villain that is much more up in your face, close and personal. And then, I think that kind of makes sense.
There's like a local drug dealer and there's Thanos. So like you got problems on a couple different levels here.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the face of Thanos, the local drug dealer doesn't really seem like a big deal. And sometimes the immediacy of the pain that the local drug dealer is causing somehow becomes more important than Thanos. I thought that worked all right.
Yeah, I thought one was much more compelling than the other.
The small time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I felt like maybe it should have been flipped just to make the stakes better.
Yes.
bigger. It could have been casting. That could have been writing. That could have been a number of things.
I sort of don't know what, I mean, we keep talking about clarity on the stakes or the issues at hand. And I don't know leading into season 2, like, what am I supposed to be worried about? Like, there's clearly a problem leading into season 2, but it's like, I don't know if I could describe it to you quickly.
Let's leave everyone with some positives.
Okay. Let's talk about a different show then. I'm joking. That was a total joke. That was a joke.
Just got Parks and wrecked. just wrecked me right here at the end. I think a lot of cool things happen on screen. I think it is trying something new. I think there's we're exploring some new ground here. It does pull from some familiar things. Absolutely. But I think we are at least experimenting with some new elements of sci-fi.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is I loved the sort of near future element of it, which is, it's like, 20, it's like 10 years from now?
70, I think.
Is where they are?
Oh, so present day in the show?
Present day in the show. What is present day in the show?
Would be about 10-ish years. Yeah.
Yeah. So everything there was kind of like the slightly cooler version of what we have now, which is fun. Like, it's not so like there's elements of the show that are like so crazy that it's like, well, I'm not going to see that. But there is like, oh, what if like, like she rides like an electric bike, but
the one thing, and it's not a spoiler, 3D printing has gotten amazing.
Yes. Right. That's
cool.
Which is not shocking, honestly. Like, yeah.
No. Like at one point, we've talked about the military guys. They're in there getting cocked and locked, but they're printing all their stuff on the printers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought, wow.
Yeah. And I actually like that one of the military, one of the soldiers had been hurt in the military. And so he didn't have legs. And so he had like a sort of an automatic one-wheel wheelchair. But then the way he drove around, like his actual car was just like his one-wheel wheelchair rolled up turned into a motorcycle, basically, but not in a Batman kind of way. It was just kind of like half of his machine sits outside while he goes inside, and then he rolls back out and connects to it. All that near future stuff I thought was great. That was very fun to imagine. And it wasn't so insane. There was a whole lot of like, oh, we play video games, really cool video games, like 10 years cooler than now in a world
and draw incomes from those.
Yep.
They're like professional video gamers. It like kind of where the story starts. That's how they make money.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I thought some of that was pretty cool.
Me too.
Some of it was pretty cool. The story is, again, you just pay attention, please. Pay attention. I think you'll enjoy it if you pay attention to some of those exposition dumps in the first couple of episodes. I think they're more important than they may seem at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
That'd be my only thing. Overall, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I would like to say, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying I don't think I liked it as much as you liked it.
So, Anthony, what have you been watching?
Yeah, by the way, sorry to not answer your question, but we didn't say that we were going to drop part of the show, but we should say that, which is that we're going to, at least for a little bit, take a break on recommending something to each other because, well, we've been, you know what? Also, our year anniversary is coming up pretty soon. It'll be this, in the next month or so. But anyway, we've been doing this for a year. And we have a lot of episodes and we're running out of stuff to easily recommend to each other that we haven't seen, like that each other haven't seen. Plus also we'll like recommend things to each other, but that's so that we can do episodes about them later on. So it's just that. So we feel like maybe that's run its course for now. So this is just what have you been watching lately?
Yeah. And we may see it again.
Yeah, sure.
We don't want to
never say
it's gone forever, but just for right now, it felt a little like we ran out of juice on that one.
Yeah. I don't know what I recommended today. Anyway, I was getting into some stuff that was like, I don't even think I recommend this.
I think it would have been for me just a lot of documentaries or like things that I threw on real quick. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But at that point, I don't know. There's a, dime a dozen on those puppies. So anyway, what have you been watching since the last time we talked?
Since the last time we talked, I watched an insane amount of World Cup. I watched probably... Like you forget that happened, but it was,
I did forget that happened.
I watched a lot of World Cup. I watched.
Did you watch a bit of every game like you had kind of talked like you were doing?
I watched a bit when that was possible. Yes, like when they were stacked on top of each other, I couldn't do it. But I watched if there were during a game time, I would watch a little bit of a game every day at that time. Toward the end, like once we went to the round of 16, I watched every game. I watched almost all of every game. And then I would like to say that I successfully, for the first time in my life, so I work at a church and the final was on a Sunday morning. So, and I had invested so much time in this World Cup.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to watch this finale.
This can't be happening. Yeah.
So, I literally announced it during church. Please don't talk to me about the World Cup at all. I said, I set my phone in my office. I shut it off, put it in my office. And I spent the whole morning just telling people not to talk to me about the World Cup. Several people tried to be funny with me, like either give me a fake score and I kept saying like, no, nothing, do not say anything. And I said it to a million people and somehow successful. So I recorded it, came home. My wife was nice enough to go downstairs and start it for me just so I didn't flip because I started it and I now know the game was still going on when I started the beginning of the game. I didn't know that at the time, but
were you like, are you sure it's the beginning?
No, she knew. It was her idea. She was like, but if you go down there and turn it on, you might turn it on and it'll be on TV and you'll see the score.
That's true.
So she went down and turned it on. I was able to successfully watch the whole thing about 3 hours after
nice.
Yeah. And it was amazing. I mean, people keep saying it was the best World Cup finale ever. And that seems, I'm prone to hyperbole, but I really it was so good. It was awesome. It was
pretty daggone cool for Messi.
Yes.
I think.
And just a really, the back and forth was amazing. So anyway, sorry. It's not a soccer podcast. I really enjoyed that, and I watched a ton of that. But I also, we are preparing for some shows, and so like specifically, I hadn't watched the Peripheral, so I watched the whole Peripheral. We have an episode on Andor coming up, and I'm almost done with Andor now. And I'm not going to say anything about it. We have an episode about Dairy Girls coming up, and watch that whole thing. So that's a lot of television right there. I think the only things I could probably bring up worth talking about is I've watched Mythic Quest, and Mythic Quest is just so interesting because
we are doing an episode on that.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Not never mind, but I'm not going to talk about that. Then we're doing an episode on Mythic Quest.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good television here though.
We are not going to do like a full recap of Yellowstone, right? So I just finished that.
So the
mid-season finale,
the mid-season finale just happened. And we're not getting the second half of this season until the summer.
Yeah.
And I know at least for a while there, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, I heard this bit of information. They had not started filming the second half of this season yet.
Yeah.
Which was, that kind of blew my mind a little bit. I didn't know we weren't going to get anything until the summer, but I was like, really? You haven't even started filming it yet? I don't know. I would love to know what they're doing. It just seems so strange. First of all, mid-season finale, mid-season, saying something is in the mid-season. That means we're going to be back in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Back after the holidays, back after the new year. That's what that means.
Yes.
That's network television has mid-season finales.
Yes.
You'll get like right around 12 or 13 episodes, and then you get the second half. And that's what that is.
Yes.
This is not that.
No.
I'm not like as angry as I sound, but I just think it's strange.
No, I agree with you. There's so many things about this show that make me mad. But so we started off in a terrible place in this season. I just didn't like where we were, didn't like what we were talking about. And then we leaned back into...
Hey, we're spoiling this show, by the way. Right?
You want to just do it? I don't have to spoil it if you don't want to. Yeah, let's spoil it. We're spoiling it because we can't talk about it unless we spoil it. So only this show we're spoiling Yellowstone.
If you're not caught up on Yellowstone, I'd get caught up real quick.
Yeah.
It's coming.
I'll
All
catch you up
go.
right now. It's Beth's insane. Jamie's insane. That's it.
They're doing their normal thing.
Yeah.
We've got about 4 stories going on. Dutton is John Dutton is the governor.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, the story's never been more boring. The stuff surrounding John Dutton's governorship is excruciating.
Yes. Terrible.
Beth is unhinged.
Yes.
Now
Yep.
she is almost unwatchable.
But also I'm forgetting that, like, you and I had conversations about this sort of, but like Beth just hauls off and beats up someone, several people this season. She just keeps getting in fights with people completely unnecessarily. She's not defending anything. What in the world are you doing? You're losing your mind. And then everybody's just like, all these men in her life are just like backing her up without just like, tell her to stop doing that.
Yeah. And I think, so she has like this relationship with her father where she really cares about what he thinks. She really respects him, but she doesn't ever listen to him.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, please don't do this.
Yeah.
And she throws a tantrum and does whatever she wants anyways.
And also basically like he's loved her his whole life. He's not mean to her or anything, not abusive to her or anything like that. But she's always like trying to earn his love. It's like, well, I just flat out tell you that I love you. I don't know what the problem is. So I don't know what you're doing. Why are you trying to get my attention? I give you my attention all the time. Basically green light everything you do.
I'm trying to picture the direction for her scenes. All right, Beth, tough, powerful chick. Take 1.
Not even insane. It's not tough, powerful chick. It's,
you don't take crap from anyone. Take 2.
yeah. Get mad for no reason, Beth.
You're tough like the guys. Take 3.
It's not tough like the guys. That's not what she's doing. She's insane.
No, I know.
Yeah. She's insane, not tough. Yeah. Anyway.
She was an interesting character early on. I thought she's always been a little crazy, but
sure.
I thought she was interesting. She had a good story early on.
Yeah.
It's wild now. Jamie's a snake.
Yep.
I mean, I think there was, which is strange for me to say this out loud, but I think I felt sympathetic for him at some point. And
yes. When Beth and when, I forget. Oh, somebody got bail. Oh, Jamie got Beth out of jail. And when they were driving away from that.
Oh, yeah. Well, she just keeps kicking him in the teeth. It was like he is laying prone on the ground and just in the teeth.
Yes.
And anyway, his character's never been great. Easily the star, two stars of this show, the people that I want the most of. Rip and Casey.
Yep. Absolutely.
The 2 best characters on the show, Rip and Casey.
Yep.
And they are great.
Yep. Still great. All their stuff's great. Yep.
2 solid performances. Their story Casey's story is getting much, much better.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like for a while they were not running out of things to do with him, but they just weren't utilizing him well.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about how Monica, I like where Monica ended up too, last couple episodes.
Ended up.
Yeah. No,
starting off, I was like, man.
Right.
What? Just forced drama?
Yes.
Forced wild drama?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was sad. It was terrible, but I don't know. It was just, we need something for this character to do. I don't know. It was a mess. Yes, I agree.
I love the ranch stuff. I love it. And I'm still coming back for it. Like whenever it pops on, I'm just so happy. Just watching
This is what the show does well.
Yes. Now, with that being said, can we point out that the person that Jamie is now sleeping with, if you have continuity between all the shows,
you can't do that.
Why not?
I don't know. It's not like a universe though. It's not like.
Well, then why do I care about the Dutton family if it's not like a universe?
It's not like.
Let me finish what I'm saying first.
Okay, yeah.
The same actress plays the girl he's sleeping with now that plays like the sister of someone in 1883, which is she's also a Dutton. So like somehow Jamie's sleeping with his great aunt. But it's 2 different characters. But it's like, There's 1,000 million actresses in the world. Why couldn't you get 2 different actresses?
The convoy cook in 1887, Cookie, has been alive this whole time because he is on the Bureau of Land Management or whatever the cattle commission.
Yes.
He's a deputy.
Yes.
So if we're going to talk about stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not there's no universe.
It is a universe.
Here.
They're asking us to care about the Duttons or whatever. Like care about the Duttons through the years. Okay, well then if I care about them, then it's definitely a universe.
There's got to be another example where I can disrupt this for you.
You're not going to.
I'm not going to think about it right now.
No, you're not going to be able to.
Anyway, Taylor Sheridan likes to reuse characters.
Yeah, that's fine. So
you reuse actors.
Also, another thing that's starting to become a big problem for me is I did look it up. Taylor Sheridan owns the 4 Sixes Ranch.
You're positive?
Yeah. He owns it.
So this show is an advertisement for.
Yeah, this show is just a giant commercial for the 4 Sixes Ranch because
not a giant commercial.
Well, and this season Beth was looking up on the internet like, well, I wonder what these other ranches do.
It's like a small commercial,
and she's like, look, this ranch down 4 Sixes just sells their meat right online here.
It's funny like because she gets on the phone with someone, and she's like, so is this our beef raised right here? It was the full commercial. It was
grass-fed beef. Yeah.
the ad right there.
Yeah. And then there's this in the finale, there was this nonsensical cut to the 4 Sixes Ranch with Jimmy and his girl. And it was I don't know. Still as long as we're out ranching, I'm happy. So sorry, I've taken a lot of time here. That's what I've been watching. I'd like to know what you've been watching.
Who cares at this point?
No, I do. That's what I talk. I was in a chatty mood because we haven't talked in a long time. So I was in a very chatty mood. I've talked a lot this evening. I've been
watching a lot of Taylor Sheridan stuff because I love the man. I love him. I've been watching Tulsa King. I've been watching 1923.
Funding the Ranch. Tell me what to do with these shows. Do I watch it?
Well, 1923, we don't have an episode planned for, so I would watch it because Harrison freaking Ford is in it and Helen Mirren, and Harrison Ford's 80 years old. Did you know that?
Well, I knew I was in that neighborhood.
Okay. Well, anyway, he's really good. This is better than 1887, I would say.
83?
1883, is that what it was?
I think so.
I could never. I'll take your word for it there.
I don't know for sure. I think
this one's called 1923.
It's better. Okay. Well,
I like it.
I liked 1883.
The ranch is established in 1923. So there's elements there. Harrison Ford is the current head Dutton. He's so good.
Yeah.
Anyway, definitely watch that. Slow Horses season 2, which I'm still holding out that we do a Slow Horses episode.
I'd like to. I liked season 1 a lot.
Fingers crossed. I think season 2 has really picked up the pace.
Oh, good.
I think so. I think it's great. I think season 1 was really good.
I
think it just kind of was a little slow. I think season 2 has really picked up the pace in a good way. Gary Oldman. I mean, that man, just great.
He's real so good. Yeah, for sure.
Treason, a little miniseries on Netflix.
Okay.
With Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil and the Netflix Daredevil, and it's bingeable. It's kind of a, I wouldn't say guilty pleasure, but it's a quick watch. It's pretty good. Pass the time.
It's fiction or nonfiction?
It's fiction. Okay. But it's British MI6. The title of the show is Treason, but it's kind of that it's like CIA stuff adjacent to that. So anyway,
cool.
It's good. Yeah. All right, man.
All right. Awesome.
That does it for this episode of Good Show. Good Show is created, recorded, edited, and produced by Anthony Mako and Brandon Sharp. Our theme music was written and recorded by me, Anthony, and all our graphics and socials are developed by Brandon. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please make sure to like or follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you appreciate our show, please throw us a rating and a review there too. If you'd like to discuss any of our content, you can search the Good Show Facebook group or follow us on Instagram at The Good Show Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.